All right, well, why don't we get started? I'm Jeff Hartman from the Chelmsford Library. We're here this week with Elizabeth Gross, and of course, this week she'll be covering LinkedIn best practices, including how to create a strong profile, optimizing for searches, what information to include, developing a network, and guidelines for maximizing LinkedIn in your job search. Elizabeth is passionate about helping people succeed in searching for new jobs. She's a former marketing executive at Monster.com. She's assisted countless people with their resumes and job searches. As owners of Job Search Divas, Elizabeth helps clients manage all aspects of their job search journey, ensuring a more productive and rewarding search. She was a featured speaker at South by Southwest 2017 and 2018, and presenting a couple of talks called You've Just Been Laid Off, Now What? And Conquering Your Job Search Journey. And she's got a BA in professional writing from Carnegie Mellon University. I'm going to turn it over to her in just a second, but before we do, I'm just going to remind you all to please mute yourself during the video while she does her presentation. If you have questions, feel free to type them into the chat box on the right-hand side, and we will have time for Q&A at the end. We are going to be doing another workshop next week that's going to be on interview tips, and that's going to be at 1 o'clock, back to the time that we were at the last couple of weeks. And also, as long as I have you all here as a captive audience, I'm just going to remind you that the library is open from 10 to 8, Monday through Thursdays, and 10 to 4 on Friday and Saturday. You can come in, or you can just do curbside pickup if you're more comfortable with that. We've got a lot of other great programs happening, including starting this evening, we've got music concerts happening every Wednesday evening at 6:30. And tonight we've got Howie Newman's Folk and Fun. He's kind of a cult figure in the New England folk music circuit. So I hope everybody will tune in for that, and just check our website and calendar for details. But without further ado, I will mute myself and I'll turn things over to Elizabeth.
Great. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. It's great to see some familiar faces from a few other sessions so far. So welcome to our veterans, and welcome also to our new folks this week. We're going to be going over using LinkedIn for your job search. So I'm going to share my screen, and then we are going to get started. Okay. Let's see. Okay, can everybody see that? Yes? Good, okay, great. All right, so let's start. Let's get started in talking about using LinkedIn for your job search. So here's what we're gonna go over today. The platform for a productive job search. We're gonna talk about why LinkedIn is important. We're going to go over best practices for your LinkedIn profile, and we're going to get into some detail. And there's going to be a tips sheet that Jeff's going to put in the chat around that time, so you guys can download that for follow-up later. Using LinkedIn's built-in tools, what they've got there, why you need to use it to make your profile even stronger, and also to be able to use it for your job search. We're gonna go through the steps to setting up a job search, and then we'll wrap everything up and we'll summarize everything about why it's important to use LinkedIn for your job search. And as usual, if something comes up during the course of my discussion that you need an additional clarification on, or you need me to repeat it, or you just want to ask a question, please go ahead. But we'll also have plenty of time at the end for Q&A. Jeff already gave the intro to me, so I'm going to jump right in to what we're going to talk about, which is starting with what is your platform for a productive job search. It's a resume and it's LinkedIn. Those two things today have to hang together, and they need to be as strong as they can for job searching today. So last week, if you were in the session, we talked about resume and why it's so important that your resume balances the content and formatting about your career to present your experience in an impactful and easily scannable way. We talked about why the resume needs to tell your professional story, how it can represent your abilities and your experience. And also we covered why resumes tend to be a bit more formal, using the third person and also using short and concise language. The idea that we went through last week was how little time people actually spend reading a resume, and why it's important to to get their attention as quickly as possible and get the point across about why you're an excellent candidate. Okay, so your resume and your LinkedIn should hang together. Social media will allow us to have more flexibility in the information that we present on LinkedIn because it's web-based. We've got the ability to do way more with a web-based tool than we do with our resume, which, as we know from last week, should only be 2 pages. We can build in more personality. We can talk more about our skills and our strengths in a more casual and conversational way. If you didn't get a chance to attend last week's session on resumes, I am going to be doing it again with the Bigelow Library, I think. You can email me if you want more information about that, or if you just want to know more about resume best practices, keep me in mind. Okay, well, let's get into LinkedIn. So why is LinkedIn important? Well, as you guys know, it's the leading professional networking tool, right? This allows you to network more effectively because you can find people that you used to work with in other roles, in past jobs. You can connect with people that you went to college with or high school. You can really build a robust network from this platform, from LinkedIn. And then you can use those connections. Maybe there are people that are connected to other people that work at a company that you're interested in finding out more about. There's a whole way, there's a whole network of possibilities through LinkedIn. So it's really important that you have a really strong profile because you want to be able to put your best foot forward when you are using LinkedIn for networking. LinkedIn gives you additional visibility with your network. So you can share things, you can post things, you can comment on things. That gets shared across your network, and then anyone that shares that, it gets shared across their network. So the idea that the visibility can really grow incrementally is amazing. LinkedIn also allows you to learn about potential employers. Every company today has a LinkedIn page, most companies. They have a LinkedIn business page. It'll tell you more about their organization. It'll share jobs that they have available. It'll show you how you're connected to employees that work there. It's a pretty powerful tool. So this allows you another way to learn more about potential employers. You can even follow these employers so that you can get first dibs on any jobs that they may post. And finally, of course, LinkedIn also allows you to search jobs and apply to them using your profile. There's this easy apply button on LinkedIn. So this is another reason why you want your profile to be fully built out. So that if you use that easy apply button to apply for a job, the application that you're sending in is, again, representative of what a strong candidate you are. But here's the biggest reason. Over 90% of people searching for talent are vetting candidates on LinkedIn. So you want to make sure that as much as your resume is built out so that you can use it as an outgoing document, that your LinkedIn is built so that you can also be found. It's an inbound tool for you, for people that are looking. And as well as, for all the other reasons you want to use it for, networking, job searching, all of those things. So that's the most important reason. So let's talk about some best practices, right? We talked about having the resume and LinkedIn hanging together, but they don't need to be an exact replica of each other. Because the first thing someone does when they get your resume is they go to LinkedIn and find out and to see what else they can find out about you. So you don't want to just tell them the same old thing, right? You want to give them more information, more personality, right? So one of the things about LinkedIn is that we can write it in first person. We can write that information in the first person versus in our resume, which is third person. But because it's social media, this is expected, first person language, and it makes it feel authentic, less stuffy, less formal, right? You don't want to come off stuffy or formal in a social media environment. It also allows us to tell a more robust and multi-dimensional story. So we've got our headshot there, a picture of ourselves. We might have some other imagery. We have the opportunity to share more information about our work and ourselves. So it really allows us to build this multi-dimensional story that isn't always possible on the resume, and think about maybe papers that you've written or presentations you've given or a website that you helped design. This platform, LinkedIn, lets you share all of that and have that visible to others who are looking at your profile. So links, like we had mentioned, to your work, media, articles, presentations. It also allows us to talk a little bit more about our hobbies and our passions. Again, the multi-dimensional story, the bigger picture of who we are. You know, LinkedIn gives us that ability to include more about organizations that we're a part of or accomplishments that we've had that are outside of our work life. So volunteer activities, all of that kind of thing can be included in our LinkedIn. So I have a friend, Amanda Healy, who is what I would call a LinkedIn power user. And this is what she has to say. So my pro tip here, your resume is what you do, LinkedIn is why you do it. So that can be kind of an interesting way to think about the two vehicles in your job search. So let's talk about the best practices for fully building out your LinkedIn profile. And as usual, I'm using my own. You guys have seen this before. So what are the important elements to make sure your profile is fully built out? A headshot. This is a must-have. So you always must have a headshot. This is like a non-starter. If someone comes to your LinkedIn profile and they see a gray image where your headshot should be, that's the first impression, and that's not a great impression. So you want to have a headshot that shows you as you are today, professional. You know, maybe something that illustrates your face and about, you know, from up here, the top of your shoulders to the top of your head. You want to be careful when you're importing any headshots that you take a look at it, because LinkedIn's little import tool sometimes tends to cut people off right about here. So you want to make sure you take a look at that headshot after you import it. And I'm not saying like you have to run down to the, you know, photo studio and have a formal portrait taken, but make sure it's a good photo. Make sure it's one that represents what you look like today, and then it's professional. You know, you don't want any photo that has somebody cut out of the side or something from a wedding from 10 years ago or something like that. You want to have something that shows you as you are today. And, you know, if you have a smartphone, or if you have access to a teenager with a smartphone, there's an awful lot of those smartphones, the newer smartphones today have a great ability for portraits. So, you know, make sure that your headshot is as good as it can be, and that it shows you who you are today. In the background, you'll notice I have an image in that rectangular area behind my headshot. Now that, if you've seen this on your profile and it looks like a blue galaxy, sort of a default thing, that's a default image that LinkedIn dumps in there, and that's editable. So this again gives you the ability to communicate something else about yourself. It could be something about your work. It could be a hobby or a passion that you have. It could be a favorite sports team. It could be a place you love to visit, right? So it could be any of those things. But what it shouldn't be is that blue galaxy background, because if that is there, that indicates to anyone visiting your profile that you're not engaged with it and with LinkedIn. There are even some stock photos that are available that are pre-sized for this background. As you can see, it's sort of a long, narrow shape. So if you're not sure about what you want to put there and you need some more time to figure out something that's more personal, you could choose from those stock images and just plop one right in there, and it's already pre-sized, which is really nice. And they're free. And if we need to at the end, I can share that link. Another really important part of your profile is the headline. So the headline is this area right underneath your name. So my headline is Job Search Strategist, Resume Writer, Head Diva. The headline is the highest ranked piece of information on your profile in terms of search. So what you don't want this to say is manager or vice president or director, or you don't want it to be your current job title. You want this headline to be representative of who you are as a professional. And if you were in the resume workshop last week, remember we talked about creating a headline for your resume. This can be the same thing. You can take that headline that you've developed for your resume and put it right into LinkedIn and use it in that area so that you are getting found when someone's looking, in my case, right, for a resume writer or a job search strategist. Those are the words that I want someone to look to find me with. So that's what you want to use in the headline. You want to also go into some of the areas of your profile that you might not have looked at in a while. So featured skills, right? Skills and endorsements is an area that falls a little bit lower in your profile underneath all your chronological experience and your education. And it tends to get sort of buried in the older area of your experience. So you want to take a fresh look at that, because a long time ago when LinkedIn added this feature, it became sort of a thing to endorse people for different skills. And maybe some of those skills aren't things you really want to promote about yourself, or they're not who you want to represent yourself as today. So now's a great time to take a fresh look and see, are those skills things that I want to be talking about? Are those skills things that represent me and what I'm able to do today? Those skills are that section, that skills and endorsement section, that allows you, I think, to have 50 different items in there, and they can be anything from technical abilities to interpersonal skills to different types of capacity that you have in different professional skills. So make sure that you're using that area. Delete the things that you don't want in there anymore, and make sure that you are highlighting the ones that you do want to have as most prominent about yourself, so that you can be found not only for those types of skills, but when you are using LinkedIn, and we'll go into this a little bit later, when you're using LinkedIn for job searching, this allows LinkedIn to understand what you are good at compared to what the job is requiring. And it helps you see what kind of match you are. So this is one more element that helps that system sort of work together. Recommendations. This is another area that you might not have looked at in a while. And if you haven't, now's a great time to do so. So recommendations are important. They help someone who's visiting your profile understand what you are like to work with or work for. And you want those to be recent. So a lot of us, again, when LinkedIn first started, which I think was in the late-ish area of 2009, 2010, or maybe even earlier, we might have gotten recommendations right away, right? Everyone was sharing, I'll recommend you if you recommend me. Well, nowadays, you want those recommendations to be from a recent job experience. So, now's a great time. If you don't have anything recent, reach out to a colleague, reach out to a former boss or someone that you used to work with and say, I'm trying to build out my profile. I'd really love to have a recommendation from you. You have to request the recommendation through LinkedIn, and it's a whole system where you request the recommendation from someone, they send it back to you through the LinkedIn platform, and then you can request edits or ask them to make a change here or there. But it's a great system because it actually isn't just something that's, pre-formatted. It's all definitely authentic, and people really do look at these. So it's really important to make sure you have recommendations. If you're actively looking for a job, you want to set yourself as open to opportunities. There's a couple different settings now that LinkedIn has. One is just to make sure that your profile shows up as open by people who are looking for talent, especially recruiters. There's another feature that is allowing, I think, a graphic to go around your headshot. The jury's out on that, I'll tell you, just from an HR and a recruiter standpoint. I've been following a few conversations on that, and it's not clear whether people like it or whether they think it's obnoxious. So I would just use your best judgment there about whether or not you want to add that to your headshot. If you're not interested in letting, maybe you're interested in keeping yourself sort of on the down low about, your job search, you might want to go into your profile and make sure that your settings are updated so that they don't notify your network when there are changes to your profile. And this is a really easy thing to do. It's going to be part of the tip sheet that, that Jeff's going to put into the chat later. And then keeping it informal. You know, we talked earlier about the resume being written in third person. First person in LinkedIn is okay. This is what people expect. So you can see in my profile, this is my about section right underneath my header, that I talk about myself. I've always had a passion for helping people. While I was at monster.com on the brand marketing team, I became interested. So you want this feeling for your LinkedIn profile to be like, maybe you and I are sitting across the table having a conversation about what it is that we do. So you want it to be very casual, very conversational, very informal, and writing it in first person is a way to get that done. So we already talked about the LinkedIn headline being similar to what's on your resume. So let's look at another profile and take a look at how the header makes the first impression. Now, in this case, this gentleman, some of you may recognize, he has a natural, authentic headshot, obviously. But look, he hasn't ever put the background image up there. So there he has that blue galaxy thing that we want to get away from. His headline shows who he is. He's the former president of the United States of America, and it conveys who he is, right? Today, exactly. You can add your LinkedIn URL to your other social media. So if you're somebody who, you know, really works through a lot of different robust tools, social media, you might want your LinkedIn URL to be included on your Facebook profile. You might want to include it on your Instagram or your Twitter. You might want to connect all of these ways that people can connect with you by making sure that LinkedIn is included in all that. Definitely do that if you want. Wait, of course, till your profile's updated. Some people aren't so wild about that. If you're someone like me, I kind of keep Facebook for my personal stuff and LinkedIn for my professional stuff. Yes, there's some overlap. But anyway, decide how you want to do it and make sure that you make the most out of using your LinkedIn URL as you want. So let's talk about your profile's content, right? You want to use your chronological experience similar to what you've included on your resume. Why? Because when you hit that apply button, when you see a job that you're interested in on LinkedIn and you want to use your profile to apply, you want that information that you share about yourself to be as robust as your resume. You also want to convey all of the great experience that you have for anyone that's coming to your profile to check you out. Maybe this, you know, potential employer who's looking for someone with your kind of skills or expertise. So you want to make sure you have everything in there that and a potential employer or a networking contact would want to know about you. Especially if you're going to be asking for someone to connect you with someone else that they may be connected with, it's always great to have as much information in your profile as possible. You also obviously want to include your education, volunteer activities, accomplishments, which could be different organizations that you're a part of or papers that you've written. Maybe you've received an award. All of that can be included in your LinkedIn profile. We talked about the skills section and why it's important to review that and adding things that you would want to be communicated about yourself and your skills. And if you're not sure about that, you know, you can also, as you start to type in certain words into that skills section, a big drop-down menu will come up, and you can see some of the other keywords that are being included. You can actually get some other ideas that way as well for skills that you want to include about yourself. The recommendations, we mentioned how important that is to make sure that you have recommendations that they are recent. I would recommend having 2 from this year in your file. When a lot of time we first built our profiles, it may have been before some companies or academic institutions, their LinkedIn page is up. Now is a great time to go back. If you've got any of those gray boxes on your LinkedIn profile where the company name should be or the company logo, now is a great time to reselect that company so that you make sure that their logo shows up on your profile. Again, this is all in the spirit of making sure it's fully built out. Same with academic institutions. Personalizing your URL. This is really important. LinkedIn offers a URL to everybody who has an account with LinkedIn, and it may involve your first name, your last name, and then a bunch of junk at the end, like numbers and letters and things that you don't really need to have as part of your URL. You want to personalize that and make it customizable to your name. That's going to be in the tip sheet that Jeff's going to share. So that's one of the instructions that you guys can take away and adjust on your profile afterwards. Why is it important to have that personalized URL? You're going to use it on your resume, first of all. If you remember from last week in our resume header, we included not only our email, our location, our phone number, but also our LinkedIn URL. That should be part of your resume. And it should be easy to type in case someone can't find you right away, right? So if it's your first name and your last name, or your first name and a dash in your last name, that's really easy. If it's like your first name, your last name, and then the string of, random numbers, not so easy. So you really want to make sure that you have a personalized URL. And, what we're trying to communicate here is that you are engaged with LinkedIn, that you are using this networking platform to connect with people, to look for a job, to get more information about companies. You are doing all of these things. And when your profile is fully built out, it really helps you promote yourself. And again, have that greater visibility with your network. What are some of the built-in tools? So LinkedIn lets you set yourself as available for new opportunities. We talked about that earlier, that there's a couple different settings. And that again is in the tips sheet. It also allows you to start following companies you're interested in or want to work for. And why is this important? Well, this lets you see the jobs that they have posted. That'll show up right in your feed if you follow a company that you're interested in. It'll also allow you to see how you are connected with that company. So for example, I was just doing a search earlier today with a client of mine, and we were looking at a company to find out how connected we each were with that company. So it turns out that I had a number of second level connections to the company, and he had none. But we could see that all on LinkedIn. So we could see that even though I didn't have a first connection, meaning I didn't know somebody personally that worked at that company, I could see a list of other people who did have that first connection. And so if I was interested in a particular role or connecting with someone at that company, I could leverage any of my connections and say, hey, I'd really like you to introduce me to so-and-so at that company. Would you be open to making that introduction? And everybody these days, obviously is really anxious to help those who are looking for jobs. So it's definitely something you want to make sure you're okay with. Adjusting your privacy settings, that will also be in the tip sheet. So we talked about that before, about making sure that you are setting those privacy settings at the level you're comfortable with. Maybe you would like everyone to know that you're making a change. Great. Just make sure you have profile settings to on, sharing profile settings or updates. If you don't want everyone to know, then set it to off, or toggle back and forth depending on what your interests are in terms of sharing your information. There's a setting where you can also see other people that were viewed that are similar to you. I recommend disabling this. This is in the right-hand column as you're looking at someone's profile. It's in the right-hand column. It'll say people also viewed. It's a distraction, and it takes the attention away from you, and you can disable that, and so it's not available for anyone to look at on your profile. Again, that's going to be in the tip sheet. You might want to schedule, if you are actively on a job search, think about scheduling time every day for LinkedIn, not only to search jobs, but also researching companies. Maybe you want to make a post or make a comment about someone else's post, or share some information that you found interesting. Maybe you want to write an article. Maybe you want to give your opinion in a blog type of format. But making sure that you're setting time aside so that you are keeping yourself top of mind with your network, as well as just making sure that you're staying up to date on what's available on LinkedIn in terms of new opportunities. One of the things that I've been seeing a lot of, and I don't know if you guys have seen this or not, since the pandemic, people have been sharing on LinkedIn when they've been laid off or that they're actively looking for a job. And this didn't used to be quite as common. But now I think that so many people are finding themselves in a new situation. They're sharing that, and other people are chiming in and saying, hey, take a look at my company. We're hiring, or let me know if I can help you in any way. I'm happy to set up a conversation. Or, geez, if you'd like me to review your resume, I'm here. And so people are really, really using LinkedIn in a new and interesting way to help others. And I would encourage you to, if you have someone in your network who's making any of those types of offers, I would take advantage of it. Okay, so we're going to set up a job. We're going to talk about setting up your job search and making sure you're using LinkedIn effectively. So we're going to set up a job alert. And this is where I'm going to toggle off of this and go to this, which you don't want to see. Whoops. And go to here, which is what we want to see. Okay. All right, so today we are going to take a look at how to set up a job alert. And these are important because you want to be notified when jobs are posted on LinkedIn that are in your area of expertise, right? Because
Elizabeth, just a moment.
Yes.
We're still seeing the PowerPoint. You might need to minimize that.
Okay, yes, thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Minimize. Close that. Now?
No.
Bring my shared window to the front.
Yeah, try that.
Let's try this.
There we go. That looks good.
Good?
I think that's what you mean for us to see.
I do. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So this is what I'm seeing, my feed, right? Obviously. One of the other things I want to point out to you guys is this area over here on the right-hand column where it says, here's who's hiring right now. This is an actively updated list of companies that are hiring. And it would be useful to tap into that every once in a while to see what's going on and what's new. Obviously, there's a lot of companies that you would expect to be hiring, right? Amazon, grocery delivery, things like that. But there's a lot of other companies that are also hiring. And if you are looking actively for a job, it's a good idea to check into that list every once in a while. Okay, so back to the job search. So here at the top navigation, you see the jobs tab, right? This is the briefcase. And we are going to look for, let's look for a director of marketing. Ooh, something is really slow with this. Director of marketing role in, let's do director of communications. Director of marketing. Okay, good. And we'll look in the greater Boston area, right? So what's coming up on the left is all of the different roles that match those keywords. Director of marketing, sort of broad, right? Obviously, the first one is a promoted one, which means that they are paying extra to have theirs pop up at the top anytime the words director and marketing, even though I'm not interested in product marketing. So that's coming up anyway. But then you see all the rest of them here, all these different roles in marketing. And what's interesting about this is that they're all through different types of organizations. So this is a recruiting firm, Hire Minds, and you can see that I can also see how I'm connected to people at this company. You can see how I'm connected here. So there's lots of different benefits to the way that this list comes up, because you can definitely see what jobs are available and you can see how you're connected. But what's important about this exercise that we're doing is this right up here. So you see where those keywords that I put in, right? Director of marketing in Greater Boston. I can set this up so that anytime a job is posted to LinkedIn, it sends me a job alert. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn that on, toggle that switch. It says, yes, I want to know when Director of Marketing roles in Greater Boston are posted. How do I want to receive my alerts? I think I'll get them weekly. How do I want to be notified? I think email is fine for me. So those are that's the method to create a search alert. Now keep in mind, I'm going to cancel this. Keep in mind that every single variable of a job title is probably what you want to set up different search alerts for. So this is director of marketing. You might also want vice president of marketing. You might also want marketing director chief marketing officer. Maybe you're looking at a number of different roles. But what I'm trying to get across here is all of the different titles and variables of those titles, you want to set up separate job alerts for. And if you're someone who's looking to move, or maybe you're interested in relocating and you want to set up different job alerts for different geographic locations, each one has to be separate. One of the other things that's cool about this is you can filter by company before you set up those job alerts. You can filter by experience level, right? So, I'm at the director level or the executive level. These are the mid-senior level. These would be the areas that I would want to check off. But if you're someone looking for internship or entry level or, earlier in your career, you can filter all of these results and the search itself by the type of level that you want. Okay, so that's job alerts. Now the challenge will be for me to get back to the presentation, which I think I can do, hopefully. Jeff?
That looks good. You're on the sort of,
Yes.
oh, there you are. Now you're in presentation view.
Thank you. So that job alerts, the whole idea of it is to let you stay on top of new opportunities and also be the first applicant to new postings. So again, using these tools that LinkedIn has for us and making sure we're using them effectively, right? Now is a great time also to review your connections. We talked about this as being one of the premier platform for networking. Now is a great time if you're in a job search to look at your connections. And for some reason, LinkedIn does not alphabetize them or make them organized in any way that I can figure out. They just seem to be sort of in there randomly. But review your connections. Remind yourself where people are working. Maybe there's some folks you haven't connected with in a while that you'd like to reach out to. Find out how they're doing. Find out what's going on in their world. And maybe share some advice for you or be able to give you some recommendations for your job search. So now's a great time to be looking at those connections. Start using your network. We talked about leveraging connections at different companies. If you saw a role at a company that you were interested in, that you could reach out to somebody that you are connected with to ask for an introduction to someone that works there, but leveraging that network. And then if you're somebody who also wants to work with recruiters and making sure that you are widening your search, you can research recruiters on LinkedIn, find out more about them, find out what their company does and what they have to offer. So, and I have to, my pro tip here comes with a caveat. It comes from LinkedIn, right? So you have to take that with a grain of salt. 70% of LinkedIn members find a job through a mutual connection. So just as important as applying for jobs online is, so it is to maintain your network and really, really be connected with folks during this time where you're job seeking. And afterwards too. It's always a good idea to keep your, what's the right term? Take care of your network, right? Always making sure you're checking in with people all the time. So using LinkedIn for your job search, this is going to be our summary. Your to-dos from this session. I want you to make sure your resume and your LinkedIn profile hang together. Fully build out your profile and make it the best it can be. Take a fresh look at all of the content. We talked about those skills, your recommendations. If there's areas of your profile you haven't looked at a while, take a look at the whole thing. Make sure that it's really communicating who you are today. You heard my story about recommendations. If you don't have them, get them. Really take a hard look at your connections. Find out where people are. Think about making a list even from those connections. And maybe reaching out to 1 or 2 people a week. finally stay positive. All of this hard work will pay off. And that is all I have for you guys. I will say thank you, and then let's open things up for questions, Jeff.
Great job, Elizabeth. I really appreciate that. What I've done is I've taken all the questions that popped up in the chat window
Great.
and pasted them into a separate page so I can look at them and go through them in order that they were received.
Okay.
I'm going to start with the ones that directly touched on your presentation. And there are a couple of, we got a question about, say, can a couple of people want to know if they could see the PowerPoint for your presentation afterwards, and maybe you'd be able to share that. And I also included a link in the chat window that the library has something called Niche Academy, where we have sort of like tech walkthroughs. And so if there's particular aspects of LinkedIn that are technical questions that we didn't get to today, you might be able to go there and find your answers. But I'll start off with Elaine, who asked early on in the presentation if it was okay to ghostwrite recommendations. She writes for a living and works with people who aren't necessarily comfortable writing. And she also wanted to know if you're listed as open on LinkedIn, if that meant your current employer can see your profile.
Okay, so the first question is it okay to have a ghost written recommendation? Is that right, Elaine? Okay. I would say that the best approach is probably to have an authentic recommendation. And we're not talking about a letter of reference that's like, you know, all involved and paragraphs and paragraphs. These recommendations on LinkedIn should be a paragraph, and it should be a snappy, quick, quick, snappy piece of information about, you know, I worked with Elaine on this project. She is detail oriented. I never had to worry about, you know, was she going to get the deadline? You know, was she going to hit the deadline? And generally she is just a really easygoing person to work with. I would recommend her without hesitation. You know, it could be something as short as that.
Okay. Actually, if y'all don't mind,
yeah.
I have a recommendation that I looked at recently and I said, oh my God, that is damning with faint praise. Can I remove it?
On yours?
Yes.
I don't know. I think you can. I know that when a recommendation is sent to you, you have to accept it so that it does appear on your profile. You actually have to physically say, yes, I'm okay with sharing this. I'm not sure how to remove it, but I'm going to find that out, Elaine.
Yes, you can.
Okay, somebody else knows?
Page, and there's a little pencil. If you're on your own profile, there's a pencil for edit. You select that. And then there's a little button on each recommendation that says show, and you can switch it on or off.
Oh, great. Marie, thank you so much.
Excellent.
That's good
great.
To know. And also some of my better recommendations, I took some time to be a mom, and some of my better recommendations are older. Do I have these people just repost recently? Like, you know, pretty much say what they said before, but just put it up again?
No, I would leave them as is from the time that they were relevant. So if today you don't have the opportunity to get a recommendation from someone that's you know, you're working with right now, it's just okay
I'm currently working. I have an odd situation where most of the people who could do jazz hands for me don't speak English. And so, and LinkedIn is not as a big thing in their country. I have two people that I've worked stateside with who are willing to say something, but quite frankly, if I asked my boss for recommendations, she would have a large kitten.
So this is where the ghostwriting piece comes in, right?
Yes.
So so what you could do in that case is you could draft up the recommendation. You can't do it through LinkedIn. You'd have to probably
send no. I was just saying is that
email.
Right. What I meant by ghostwrite is say, hey, I would point out, I did this thing. Wasn't it cool? Can you write to that? I'm just more like
Oh, absolutely. Direct. Yes.
To give them an outline.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Or even write it and say, you know, here's what I kind of would say if you want to, you know, edit it. Yes, you can absolutely do that. And I'm sorry, Elaine, you had a second question that
I actually he'll notice that I asked lots of questions. So
yeah. Let's move on.
He's organizing them, but these are just on the recommendations. I'm very happy. Thank you, Marie, for telling me about how to, because I looked at it because I was just starting to do this I've enjoyed the presentation very much because my company had layoffs last week. I'm currently working, but who knows the future?
Yeah, yeah.
And I haven't really beaten up my LinkedIn, and so I do want the presentation because it looks like there's hours worth of work that I have to do to get my LinkedIn to be like
It'll be worth
diva.
it. It'll be worth it.
Let's move on real quick to a few. We'll try and get back to some of your other questions, Elaine, because you did have some other great ones. But N Singh also asked, how many recommendations are good enough? And that's a really tough question to answer, I bet.
Well, there's no magic number. I would say that if you had a couple, like 2 from this year, a couple, having anything in there is better than nothing. I think that as many different people as you could reach out to. So one of the rules of thumb I use is, if I want 3 recommendations, I reach out to 5 people, because there's always going to be a couple people who are too busy or can't be bothered, or, just don't have it, just isn't priority for them. So, you might want to overreach and be happy with, a lower number, 2 or 3 that you get out of that.
Okay, great. I think that's a fantastic answer. Joan asked about when you're building your profile, she asked, doesn't too much information about hobbies and other passions outside of what you do for a living come across as too familiar and more like Facebook or one of those other social networks? How would you respond to that?
I think you can make a nice balance. So, one of the things that you can make as a personal representation of yourself is that background image. And if that's all you want to include, then that's fine. If there's other things that you want to say about your volunteer activities, things that sort of make you a more well-rounded person, then that's up to you. But I think one of the things that we all need to decide is how do you want to use LinkedIn? Do you want to fully represent yourself in every dimension and every aspect of your personality and your professional life and all of those things? Some people say, you know what, I'm just going to keep it really to the professional side, and maybe my background image is going to be, something about my work, and maybe that's the way you want to approach it. So the nice thing about this is it really lets you decide how much you want to share.
Okay, I think that's a great answer. Next, we'll move on and just doing lightning round stuff here, because I know you have to be gone at 3. Netta asked about the skills section and how many we should aim to add, and whether we should focus more on technical or interpersonal skills or have a mixture, and if it's better to focus on a few really, really strong skills or to go for more variety and have as many as you can.
Netta, it's a great question. LinkedIn's skills section will actually separate those things into the different categories, like tools and technology is a separate category, interpersonal skills is a separate category. So you don't need to necessarily worry about how many, but just know that you can go up to 50. I always find that making sure that I'm not being repetitive or redundant in that skills section is really important, because you might put in 3 different kinds of marketing and then realize that you're kind of saying the same thing. Or sometimes it'll read lowercase letters as one skill, and then the same word in uppercase with a upper initial cap as a different word. And that's not really necessary. So when I say take a fresh look, it's to make sure that you're not being redundant, that you're including as many things about yourself that you think is important in terms of your skills. And if you need ideas, look at other people's, right? But just know that 50 is the max. And to me, like, it's probably hard to get to 50.
All right, that's a great answer, I think. Let's jump to Mary, who sort of came back to that question of personal versus professional. She shared that she's a parent who's currently laid off, looking to go back to work, but she needs to work around the children and the fact that school is going to be really difficult this year for a lot of people, and wants to know how much you'd recommend divulging in her profile about this situation. And I think this will probably come up next week in the interview session as well.
Right. So I think it's fair to say that we are all navigating a new world. Employers are navigating a new world. Parents are navigating a new world. Working parents are navigating a new world. And I think that what's important to keep in mind is that you want to put the impression on LinkedIn about what it is that you have to offer, not about what your restrictions are or about what your challenges or your concerns are, because everybody's got challenges, concerns, and restrictions right now. It's really about making sure that you're representing yourself from a professional standpoint and leaving those things for future conversations. You know, every employer these days that's going to have, you know, interviews is probably going to talk about, you know, what they're doing to help support their employees who are working parents, or at least good companies will, right? So those conversations might come up later in your job search. I wouldn't lead with that on your profile.
Okay, great. That's fantastic advice. Next, we're going to go with Karen with a slightly more technical question. She saw that a lot of the ads that we were looking at when you showed us the screenshot of LinkedIn said promoted next to them.
Yep.
And does that mean that they're more anxious to fill the position, that they've been willing to spend money to get that in front of our eyeballs?
I don't know. But I will tell you that because when I worked at Monster, you know, ads that you post cost money, and then there's pay more, get more eyeballs. So that's probably what they're doing there, is they want to make sure that it's crossing different types of searches and making sure that it pops up at the top, because no, you know, a lot of times people don't scroll down, but it's probably just a money thing.
Okay, great. Next up is David. He, again, with a technical question. He says he's applied for several jobs through LinkedIn, but doesn't seem to see them under his applied jobs tab. And he was wondering if he was doing something wrong, or if those just don't necessarily show up there right away.
I'm not sure, David. That is a technical question that is outside of my knowledge. But maybe, does anyone else have any ideas?
The only thing I was thinking about maybe is the jobs I have applied for through LinkedIn weren't easy apply jobs. They were ones that took me to the employer's website. And I did get emails back from the employer, so I know they got my application. But I thought it was kind of strange that there's a tab in LinkedIn for applied jobs, but those jobs aren't going there. So I'm just keeping them under saved jobs for now, so I don't lose track of them.
That's a good idea. Another sort of off LinkedIn recommendation would be to keep your own sort of job tracker. And you probably remember this from our first session, where you're keeping track of all that stuff. So it's not like, oh, I think I applied on LinkedIn and over here on Indeed, and maybe this one was on, you know, the company website, just so that you know where you have where you've applied. And it sounds like Rebecca's answering that question. It only works for LinkedIn Easy Apply.
Oh, okay. Because actually, after this is over, I have an easy apply job to apply for. And I'll prove that theory out. I'll let you know.
Excellent.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Great. I don't know how much more time you have. There is one more from Elaine that I wanted to get to, because
I have a question too that I didn't put in.
Oh, sure.
Is that
so? Let me just. Hi, Christina. Just give me a second. So in terms of time, I can go till a little after 3.
Okay, great.
Maybe 2 or 3 minutes after 3.
Sure. Let's do Chris's question first, and then I'll read this other question from Elaine.
Okay. Real quick, I noticed on LinkedIn periodically I'll get an email that says you have shown up in one job search, 2 or 3. And then I go in and you really don't see anything concrete. And to me, is that also linked up to the fact that periodically I get email solicitations from LinkedIn to give money to buy their premium package, which I'm averse to, but can you maybe speak to that?
Yes. Okay. Good question. Thank you, Christina. So LinkedIn tracks who visits your profile, and people visit profiles all the time, right? You might check out folks that are in your network, or other people might be looking at your profile, and they track that, and they do. It's exactly what you're saying, Christina. They send you that email and they say, oh, you've shown up in, 15 searches this week. Do you want to know who's looking at you? And so it does kind of make it feel like you should buy that premium, because you might want to know who's looking at you. But I think the real answer is, what is it that you hope to get out of that, right? Like, is it interesting to you that someone looked at your profile, and then what are you going to do about that?
Okay, go ahead.
That's all.
I do have one thing to say about that, if for anybody that would be interested in buying it. My sister did that, and she said that you can't, even if you buy the premium package, you can only see the employers if they didn't shield themselves from you. Some
There
of
is-
them, in other words, you can't
That's
see
right.
the hiring manager anyway. So you've
So
spent the money.
right. And you can
Is that-
always try it out. You know, they offer 20, I think it's $29.99 for the first month. I mean, it's free for the first month and then it's $29.99 after that. You could always try out premium and see if you think the features are worth it for you. That's not the only feature that it has. You know, one of the other things that it lets you do is message people who you're not connected with, which may or may not be interesting to you if you're in a job search like the hiring manager. So there are a number of other features that premium offers. I would just encourage you to investigate them and figure out, like, am I really going to use this or not? And someone else wanted to say something about that. Was it Marie or somebody mentioning?
Yeah, I was just going to say, as somebody who pays for the premium, it still doesn't give you that much information. It'll give you individuals,
Right.
but then it'll say 7 people with the word recruiter in their name. Well,
Right.
that's completely unhelpful.
Right.
Those are
Not
people
helpful.
that I want to know who they are.
I know. And I always feel that if someone's looking at my profile and they're interested enough in me for whatever reason, they're going to reach out. You know, they're going to send me a message or send me a LinkedIn request or find me in another way. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
Good.
Do you have time for one more, Elizabeth?
Uh-huh.
Okay, then I'll grab this one from Elaine that's actually sort of more a broader one about job search in general. She said for her particular type of job, there's often a long list of requirements, which she mostly has, but then the level says entry level, which kind of turns her off from applying because she's at a senior contributor level right now. And is it worth the time to apply for jobs like that if you feel like it's not going to be, they're not going to show you the pay range a lot of the time, and you're going to put a lot of effort into chasing that job down and then maybe not actually want it?
It's a good question. And let me just think about the way I want to answer this. So I'm a big fan of throwing your hat in the ring, even if maybe you don't tick off every single one of the requirements, or the requirements sometimes might be not exactly in at the same level that you're thinking of. The idea is that the company is getting your information. And whether they find you as a fit for that job, or maybe they're thinking about some other role that they haven't even posted yet, it's always a good idea to have your information with them so that they can make those decisions.
The one thing, and I bet David sounds like he's doing an active job search. Sometimes the applications are effing onerous. They're
Right.
like super galactically
That's
ridiculous.
right. It can be terrible. I mean, there's a whole other topic that we could talk about, probably a whole nother session on bad candidate application experiences, right? I mean, we could go on. I could share a number with you, but I would say that, you know, right now, you know, if you're actively looking, you kind of got to play the game, right? So if you want to put your hat in the ring for a role because you're interested in the company, then I would say do it. If you find that the application process isn't, you know, as
it's not easy to apply.
streamlined. Yes, and that's going to be individual to each company. I mean, there's nothing we can really do about that except for play along.
Okay.
All right.
So we're not going to get to ageism?
I'm thinking no. Elaine had a question really early on about whether ageism would be a topic we'd cover in this. And I think maybe that could be something that you might touch on in interviews next week. But yeah, it didn't really fit in with the LinkedIn idea, and we're almost out of time now.
I know,
But
I'm sorry.
I did post that LinkedIn tips and tricks PDF in the chat
great.
window. So please download that. A little bit further up, you'll see that I post the link to the library's Niche Academy page. So you could try that out as well. But
The other thing, Jeff, I think people were, or was it Elaine who asked about the presentation? So there will be, the recording will be shared, and then that's the way you can revisit the slides.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you all for coming. We've really appreciated having you. The library is really thrilled that we can offer this right now, despite everything that's going on, and we don't even have to wear masks, which is awfully nice. So thank you again, Elizabeth. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. See you next week.
Thanks.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.